Hi, hello, how are you? I am making this video about some autumn, specifically fantasy books I would like to recommend because I feel like I would just kind of go off the rails if I tried to do like wider genres. So I'm sticking with fantasy for this one. This pumpkin spice candle is so fragrant. Oh my God. So I was writing this list just kind of like first titles that came to mind, and then I compared it with last year's autumn video, and I gotta say that list that I made last year, chef's kiss. There are some in there that are non fantasy books. So if you want to check that out, that list is like, will I ever be able to top it? I don't think so. I stand by every single book that I recommended, even the ones that I personally didn't like. I have a feeling a lot of you guys might like them. So if you haven't watched that one, I will link it down below. But yeah, that was like stellar list. Pat myself on the back. Excellent recommendations if I don't say so myself. So I'm going to try to not repeat myself, but I will be referencing that. So if you hear any repeats, sorry, not sorry, they're great books. And the first book that I want to start off with is actually the book that I read yesterday, and it is Spells for Forgetting. This is by Adrienne Young, and you guys know I'm a huge Adrienne Young fan. She wrote the duology Fable, Fable and then Namesake, and then she also wrote The Last Legacy, which is in the same world as Fable, but you totally don't need to read the duology to understand The Last Legacy. And then she is writing, I don't know if it's out yet, but she's writing kind of the prequel to the Fable duology, which is called Saint, which is about Fable's father. So excited. She's written a bunch. I've loved every piece of young adult fantasy that she's ever written. But this is her first adult fantasy. And I say this as like the biggest Adrienne Young fan. This felt like something that I've read before. It's just one of those stories that's like a small secluded town and someone hasn't been back for years for mysterious circumstances, and then, you know, the mystery of why they left unfolds and it's not what you'd expect, you know? So on one hand, I didn't love the fact that it wasn't like so original, because I feel like Fable and everything like that, it felt like this fresh new world. But on the other hand, I thought that like for that kind of story, it was well done and I enjoyed it. It takes place on this island called Sersha, off the coast of, I think, Seattle. You can take the ferry from Seattle. It's a really small community. These like handful of families have lived there for hundreds of years. The only time that they're ever really visitors is when people come during apple season to pick apples, because there's a huge orchard there, and that's kind of how they survive, is selling apples and then having tourists come in apple season. And then other than that, like, nobody comes to the island. And we know from the get-go that there's some kind of magic going on with the island. The island like kind of has a mind of its own, but we don't go like for a fantasy. She kind of does this with all of her fantasies. The magic isn't the forefront of the story. It's very much just character based, and the characters don't rely heavily on magic or anything like that. We basically have a man named August who left the island but was sort of more like kicked out, run out of the island with his mom when he was 18, and he hasn't been back for 14 years, but his mom passed away and wants her ashes buried on the island, and he has to like sell the house and like all the loose ends that they just left behind. He has to tie up, and then he will be like done with the island forever, right? So we have him coming back, and then we learn about kind of the people left behind and like why did he leave and all of this stuff. It was just autumn vibes. Like, she absolutely put this out at the right time. It came out September 23rd, I think. Excellent timing. It's just all about the coming of autumn, and it feels very just like cold, and I love her word choices always. I also love the names that she chooses in all of her books. It just, even though the story wasn't incredibly compelling, it just felt so vibesy. Like I wanted to watch it on screen. So if you're looking, I literally just like was in this blanket chugging tea all day. I had a candle lit and I read it in one day. It took me a while, but it was just such a perfect autumn afternoon, even though it was really hot. I had my air conditioner on. Yeah, if you're looking to just kind of get lost in the Pacific Northwest on a creepy little island, and they talk about reading tea leaves and, you know, running through the woods and stuff like that. I did enjoy it. It just wasn't, it didn't hit me as hard as like Fable and Namesake did. But it absolutely was a story that was like fantasy borderline thriller. So yeah, I would highly recommend Spells for Forgetting. And if that didn't really entice you, but you still like that kind of Pacific Northwest vibe, I mentioned this in my last video, but I would recommend The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw. This also takes place, I believe this one takes place in Oregon. It's a small little town and they have this thing called swan season. Technically it takes place in summer, but something about the way that it's written feels very autumn-like to me. Like I said, this little town, there is something called swan season. A long time ago, the townspeople killed 3 sisters, the Swan sisters, because they believed that they were witches, and they drowned them out in the bay. And ever since then, every summer, a boy goes missing, a boy drowns. And we follow our main girl who is just trying to live her life, survive another swan season, and she runs into this stranger. This boy just kind of floats into town, and she's like, why on earth would a boy of this particular age range come here when boys of that age die? Like, what's going on? And so we kind of follow this mystery as well. I thought that the ending was like not super my style, but I felt like I enjoyed the actual reading experience. I enjoyed the whole rest of the story, and like I said, it felt very autumn-like. It reminded me a lot of Practical Magic, like the house. I don't know, like something about it. I got Practical Magic vibes, but like also Twilight, just because of the setting. So I would also give that a go if you're looking for kind of like rainy, creepy, witchcraft, mystery, spooky stuff. The Wicked Deep. And then speaking of Shea Earnshaw, a new one for you, I want to recommend A History of Wild Places. I need to pour my tea, hold on. Anyway, A History of Wild Places. This was also, I believe, Shea Earnshaw's first adult novel. Is it a fantasy? Could it be? No. I want to put this in just like the eerie genre. How do I don't even remember like what's a spoiler. Okay, I said this when I reviewed it in my monthly wrap up, but if you guys remember the film The Village, it reminded me a lot of that, where it's about this, I guess like a commune. I don't know. It's this group of people in the 70s, the 80s, who just kind of left civilization. They were kind of over it, and they bought this piece of land in the middle of the forest, and they kind of just left and lived there, and no one has really heard from them ever since. And so the whole story kind of revolves around that. We also have our main character who is a detective. Okay, it is kind of a fantasy. Yeah, he's a detective because he can like sense things from objects. Like he can sense the dead, or like kind of see the last images that happened to certain things. So he finds an abandoned car, and that he can like see somebody walking into the woods. So you get it? So yeah, we have a missing author that he has been tasked in finding, and she is writing a book, and the last one is supposed to come out, but it's all about, I believe she's writing kind of children's stories, but it's all about the woods, and like it's really kind of disturbing, and it kind of alludes to wandering into the woods and getting taken by monsters, and she disappears, and her mother is like, I'm pretty sure she wandered into the woods and was taken by monsters, and he's sort of like, okay. So it's one of those where it's I think it's multiple points of view, but it's very kind of creepy, a little meta, because it's a book about a book. It took place mostly in the woods. I don't know, everybody had like an old name. something about it. Autumn vibes. It wasn't, again, it wasn't my favorite. I think that her young adult stuff was stronger, but it has the vibes. If you want to like curl up and read a kind of eerie story, it will definitely do that for you. And I think I would like it more maybe on the second read. I'm not sure, but that is A History of Wild Places. Next up, just an intermission to talk about my love of Margaret Rogerson. I will not shut up about Sorcery of Thorns. I will not stop until everybody has read it. So yeah, I will just mention in passing, because hopefully you guys have already heard me talk very highly about it, but A Sorcery of Thorns and An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. They are standalone fantasies. They are wonderful. I tend to lean more towards Sorcery of Thorns, but I feel like An Enchantment of Ravens has a more autumn vibe to it. So very quickly, A Sorcery of Thorns is about a girl who is raised basically in a library. I believe that she's orphaned, and all she wants to do is grow up and work in this library, but it's not a normal library. No. It's a library that houses grimoires, which are spell books, and they tend to have a mind of their own, and they need to be cared for and everything, or else they become monsters. The books kind of implode and become horrible things. So she just takes care of them, and one day something horrible happens in the library and she is charged with a crime. And in order to sentence her and punish her, she needs to go to be judged by the local wizards. And she has been raised to fear wizards because they like eat pretty girls' hearts, a la Howl's Moving Castle. All right. That's why I always say Dark Academia, Howl's Moving Castle. And of course, the wizard that comes to pick her up to bring her to be judged is this like snarky little wizard man who has a demon friend, and they are so snotty to each other. And as they're traveling, we uncover a lot of corruption, and there's just something much bigger at play. And I loved it. And in January, we're going to get a little novella. I think it's going to be like a wintertime novella, and I am so excited. I just really, really loved it. So if you haven't read Sorcery of Thorns yet, do me a solid. It pains me that this story exists and you haven't read it yet. So do it. And then Enchantment of Ravens is actually, I think, her first. I think this was her debut YA fantasy, and it's about a girl who is human, but she lives kind of on the border of the Fae realm. And the story kind of centers around the fact that Fae can't make anything. They can't cook. They can't make art. They can't make music. They can only consume. And so she is a very talented painter. And so the Fae really love her because she can make things, you know, she makes beautiful things. And so she's constantly getting work from Fae asking her to make portraits and stuff like that. So our story begins when she is asked by one of her friends, like, would she be interested in painting a portrait for this Fae? And she's kind of like, I hate it, but we need the money. So she agrees to do it, and she does the painting. There's weird tension. There's something in the air, okay? But our real story starts when she gets a complaint. She gets a bad Yelp review. Basically, the person she painted, he gets the painting and he looks at it and he is horrified by what he sees. And he basically demands that she come with him to his court to explain what the hell she did. And she doesn't know. She has no idea. She just painted her thing. So it's a cute little Fae time. I believe he's part of the autumn court, which is why I think it has more autumn vibes. It's been a long time since I've read this. But I just remember it feeling just like a wonderful little fantasy that mostly takes place in the woods. And I feel like an autumn read should mostly take place in the woods. So that is An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson, because it would feel just wrong to have a video without talking about her. But my next book is one that I read relatively recently, and it is A Far Wilder Magic. And I really enjoyed Down Comes the Night, which is by the same author. And I feel like this one got a lot better. This one had a lot more, I don't know, the characters just felt a lot more fully developed. And so I personally, if you read Down Comes the Night and you were sort of like meh, give A Far Wilder Magic a try. I think that their writing just keeps getting better. So A Far Wilder Magic takes place in an obscure time. There are cars, but there's no electricity. Or are there cars? There's trucks. I don't know. It's like a very strange time. It takes place in this community where they practice, I'm doing it again, guys, where I want to say apothecary, but I'm trying to say, not again. Say it with me, guys. Alchemy. Like the second I know it, I know what alchemy is, but it just never comes to mind when I try to recall it. Alchemy. In this society, there is alchemy. There is like these mystical creatures, one of which is terrorizing the town. And so every once in a while, they hold this big hunt, and anybody can come join, but you have to join in teams. And there is one hunter and one alchemist, and whoever wins will get fame and fortune and la-di-da-di-da. So it follows, I believe it's split POV. Our main girl is the daughter of an alchemist, and her mother has been traveling because of her work in alchemy for a very long time. She's basically like abandoned this girl, and our main girl thinks that if she can do something big, it will get her mother to come home, and that big thing would be to win this hunt. Our other POV is from our main boy, who is trying his best to become an alchemist, but he keeps kind of failing all of his apprenticeships. Our main girl's mother is sort of his last hope, and he thinks he's like a charmer. So he's like, she didn't answer my mail, but I'm sure if I just show up to her front door, she won't turn me away. So he goes. Of course, she's not home. He just gets her cranky daughter who doesn't want anything to do with him. And he's really doing this because he needs money. He needs to support his family. He's hoping to go into politics one day. And so if he were to win the hunt, that would also be good for him, right? So they kind of reluctantly work together to reach both of their goals if they do. And I just thought it was really cute. I wish that she had gone deeper into the actual mythology. There were a lot of questions that were posed that were kind of never answered. And I don't think it was part of the story to really answer those questions. It was more me being nosy and wanting the world building to be just like, I don't know, finished, wrapped up. So I think there's more that she could do with the world. I don't know, but it is a standalone, and I just had a good time with it. I thought that the characters were really cute. I thought their interactions were funny. And yeah, I would recommend A Far Wilder Magic. Next up, so last year I mentioned The Binding, which was a fabulous, fabulous book by author's name escapes me. It was, how do I explain this? This was a book that you need to read twice because you are told so little as the story goes on, and then once something happens, then it like changes the whole story. So I really can't tell you too much without spoiling it, but it is mainly centering around our main boy who used to work on the farm with his father. As one does, he was going to inherit the farm. That was going to be his life. Something happened to him. He got really sick, and we learned that like he wasn't just sick, but he was getting really violent. Like he had to be restrained, and he would like, if anybody came near him, he would try and hurt them, kind of thing. Like it wasn't just like he got a cold, okay? And it took him a really long time to recover, and even after that, it seems like he might never be able to really be back to full strength again and stuff like that. So his parents are really concerned about what is he going to do in his life when he is offered an internship or an apprenticeship. But the problem with this apprenticeship is that it's with a bookbinder. And we were told from the very beginning of the story that books are bad. Written word is bad. Something about in this world, there's something sinister with things written on a page. And so his family has always told him to stay away from books. Why are they now open to sending him to an apprenticeship where he will become a binder. Weird stuff. So the whole beginning of this book is actually just his apprenticeship. I loved the vibes in terms of it's just this workshop and he's learning about books and binding things, and something happens and the story kind of starts anew. I felt like there were three totally different totally different feelings that I got at reading this, that were tied together so well. I really loved it. So I can't tell you more. There is romance and it's heartbreaking and it's beautiful, but I can't tell you more. So that's the binding. But this year I read their next novel, which was The Betrayals, and similar to the binding, it is one of those books that you find out stuff about the world very slowly, and so it makes, I would assume, I haven't read it the second time, but it makes the second read quite different. So The Betrayals is much more dark academia, and I mentioned this in my review of it, but there is this main part of the plot, something that the plot revolves around that is never explained, and it's totally fine. Like it made it, how do I even describe this? The Betrayals takes place in a world that is definitely going through some stuff in terms of the politics. Our main guy worked vaguely in the government, but there's this kind of McCarthyian thing going on, and a dictator is on the rise, if not already in power. Anybody who is relatively questioning the regime is sort of shuttled off elsewhere. I forget exactly why, but he is forced to return to the school that he studied at as a boy, and this school is specifically for the grand jeu, which is the great game, and it's the like national pastime. They're really proud of it. It's, you know, dictatorship, nationalism, right? So, and the grand jeu is the thing that is never really explained. It's described in a way that makes it feel like sometimes it's spoken word, but it's also like a symphony, but there's math involved. There's maybe interpretive dance with, because you're competing, like it's doesn't, I can't explain it because it was never explained to me, but when you're describing how these students are coming up with their grand jeu, because you have to like write it, I can't explain it. The vibes were immaculate. I loved reading it. I was on a train. I was traveling through Europe at the time. Like it was just, so good. The story in and of itself though, like plot-wise, confusing. The atmosphere of the book was fantastic. The actual plot, a little shaky. I'm not gonna lie. If you're looking for a kind of dark academia feeling and you haven't read The Betrayals yet, I would definitely give it a go. Don't expect to have a really satisfying ending. Just be there for the ride and appreciate it. I thought that the references that it made, like it referenced a lot of philosophy and play. Like it just had so many beautiful references that it made me go look things up later, and it was just really wonderful. So it was like fantasy, borderline, dark academia, borderline, God knows. It was just not my favorite, but definitely great if you want to curl up with a candle and a good book. Speaking of dark academia, I will mention one of my recent reads, which was Babel by R.F. Kuang. Can I say about this book? It takes place at Oxford in the late 1800s. It is about a group of students who are studying translation. The book is basically a deep dive into talking about the power of language and colonialism and imperialism, and there is magic, and there is just Oxford as a setting in and of itself. I feel like gives me such a great autumn academic feeling, kind of going back to school. It is dark. I mentioned that I felt like some parts of it were just a little bit too long, but overall I thought that it was really important, really engaging. I loved all of the characters. And I loved some of the deep dives that we went into when it came to tracing back the origins of words and stuff like that. If you haven't picked it up, I know it's super buzzed about right now. So it's hard for you to have not heard about it, but just my 2 cents, I would highly recommend you reading Babel by R.F. Kuang for some autumn dark academia vibes. And last but not least, I will mention The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. This is by cari, and it is a story based off of a Korean myth. It's about a girl who lives in a seaside village, and they mostly focus on the sea god. There are obviously many other gods, but for them living in this little seaside town, the god of the sea is their god, all right? And like most gods of mythology, he's not super nice. He's not always really happy. And every once in a while, he will just become enraged. There will be these massive storms and waves and destruction. And the only way to satisfy him is to sacrifice a young girl by throwing her into the sea to become his bride. And our story starts off with our main girl messing that whole thing up. I can't tell you much more, but she does go into the spirit realm. She finds out that their problem is much bigger than just making sure the sea god has a bride, okay? I just thought that the world was wonderful. I thought like it mostly takes place in the spirit realm, so things are quite dreamy. It felt, I just really loved it. There's so much imagery in terms of like just Korean architecture. All of these little details are so wonderful, and I really, really loved it. So if you're looking for a kind of stormy sea mythology feeling, I highly recommend The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. I want to do a reread of it already, and I think I just read it a couple months ago. So highly recommend cari, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. And that is my list for the year. We made it again. Highly recommend checking out last year's list. I'm very proud of that. But yeah, let me know down below if you have any. I think I have, my phone is too far away, but I do have quite a few books on my list that I'm on hold for to read. So if I have any, I'll put them down in the description box. But yeah, hopefully you guys have a really good autumn. Leave your recommendations down below so that I can read some more. And yeah, I hope you guys get yourself a pumpkin spice candle, because whoa, this one's really good. This one's from my friend's candle brand here in Korea. So sorry, it doesn't ship internationally yet. Anyway, hope you guys are good. I'm really hungry. That's why I'm talking really fast at the end of this video, is because I want to go get my dinner. I am heading over to America for almost all of October, so I will be on the West Coast for a little bit, and then at the end of October I'll be on the East Coast, and so hopefully I can get you some proper East Coast autumn content. My parents' house, this is my first autumn in their new house, and they like back up to the woods, so hopefully I can get you some like foxes and deer and autumn leaves content, and if not, we'll still have my dog. You can look at my dog Louie and it will be great. So I'm gonna try and vlog a little bit for you. So definitely send me some autumn recs that I can read on the East Coast. Maybe have some pumpkin pie, you know? Really go hard with the American autumn feeling. Yeah, I will leave you guys here, but thank you as always for joining me. Hope you're well. Also, happy spring to my dear Southern Hemisphere people. I'm not forgetting you. You are loved. You are recognized. And see you next time. Okay? Bye!